Hey guys, hello, welcome. I'm still paranoid about having a blurred screen, you know. Those who were in the chat yesterday, I was paranoid about having a blurred screen as I was reading through the probable cause affidavit. And when I checked back on the replay, it wasn't blurred. It might have been for a little bit, but it wasn't blurred. But yeah, I'm looking at YouTube on my screen. I've got StreamYard on one screen, and I've got YouTube on another, and it looks blurred. It's bizarre. The chat doesn't. I can see the chat very clearly, but the screen that you're viewing, looks blurred. I don't understand whether it's just this computer or what. It's very odd. Very odd. I don't understand. Anyway, I was nearly late. I was just about to click go live, and someone knocked at the door, and it was Amazon, an Amazon delivery driver, who actually knocked rather than just walk in. Got my delivery of poo bags, 1,000 poo bags. Doggy poo bags. Yeah, so I'm stocked up for the next, I don't know, 6 months now. That's good. Betty, thank you. Hopping in very early with $9.99. Thank you so much. It's very kind of you. Okay, so what I'm going to do today is follow on from what I did in my video this morning. So if you've had a chance to see that, good stuff. If not, it doesn't matter. It's not like you won't understand this stream if you hadn't watched that video. It's just that what I said was I'm trying to break down the information in the affidavit into kind of chunks because it was a lot. My brain was absolutely fried yesterday. I mean, fried. Having spent nearly 3 hours going through that document and then discussing it and then watching the hearing and discussing that, and it was just a lot. It was a lot. So I've decided just for the next few videos just to break it down and do it in chunks. I think that's the easiest way to do it. So I'm trying not to make this live really, really long, so it will still be a digestible chunk. But every time I say I'm not going to be on long, I end up being on long. So I don't know what to tell you. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about Dylan, one of the surviving housemates, and just explain my view, my opinion on why the 911 call didn't come in for 8 hours. And although your opinions are welcome, all opinions are welcome, what I don't want to see in the chat is any victim blame or saying she's involved, right? Because that's not why we're here. That is not why we are here. Let me just make that absolutely clear. Cuckoo Cachoo, $4.99. Careful with your drinks. Oh dear. Justice just fried his laptop. Oh my word. Do you mean justice for all? Is that what you mean? Has he poured a drink over his laptop? Oh dear. Oh dear. Thank you for the $4.99. I've just got my laptop back from the repair shop yesterday. It needed a new screen because I stood on it. So what I absolutely don't want to do is go and get it repaired again. But so we're going to talk about that, and then I want to talk about familial DNA, because two things that I'm seeing, not just in comments on my channel, but on Twitter, Facebook, just on social media generally, those are the two things that I'm seeing coming up again and again and again. So by far, Dylan not making a 911 call there and then when she saw the masked intruder, that's by far the most popular topic. I mean, before I went live, Dylan was actually trending on Twitter. So that's by far the most perplexing and confusing. And it's right to ask those questions. It is confusing. It doesn't make sense. But that's why I'm going to give my take on it as someone who's worked in trauma, done research on trauma for quite a number of years. So, and then something else kind of secondary is about the familial DNA that was checked to get a profile, like linking Brian Koberger to his parents' house. So it's basically getting a positive ID on the DNA found at the crime scene on the sheath of the knife. So I want to just explain that, what it means. And it doesn't mean that Brian's dad was the killer. People are just, I think, getting confused, but that's very much secondary to the conversation on Dylan. That's just out of control. Thank you, Patricia, for the $5. Sadly, FB page has changed from hate the Wells to hate Dylan. I think social media has. I think social media has. I am seeing a lot. I'm seeing a lot of comments supporting her. Right, let's be clear. I'm seeing a lot of comments supporting her. But alongside that, you know, I don't think she was involved, but, and then the but is generally negative. But it's confusing and perplexing why she didn't call 911. So like I said, I think I'm just going to give you my opinion on it. And obviously we don't know. We don't know because we don't have anywhere near like enough information to be able to give a judgment. The people making those judgment calls that are negative, we don't have enough information to be able to do that to her at all. So she will have been interviewed probably several times. I bet she was interviewed on the day. I bet she's been interviewed by the FBI. She'll have been interviewed a number of times. She'll have had her phone checked. There'll be all sorts of things done because the initial suspects would have been those closest to the crime scene, and that's Dylan and Bethany, right? They will have been looked at very hard, and yet with only a few days into the case, certainly less than a week into the case, the police said that they didn't believe, you know, that the surviving roommates were not suspects. They believed that they had nothing to do with it. But yet still, when that affidavit came out, some of the first comments that I saw on social media were, I told you, I knew she was involved. I knew Dylan was involved. So nobody has the right to make those kind of judgments. If the police have said that the surviving roommates are not, they're not interested in as suspects, then why are people still going for them? And I think this has added a little bit of fuel to that fire, certainly. But it's an understandable question why she didn't call 911. And there's been a few comments on that as I was getting ready to start my live just before the Amazon driver knocked on the door. I was reading the comments like in the chat before this started. So there's some good comments already here. So Karen says, Dylan may not have been aware of the severity of the events happening at the time, possibly thinking just another party goer in the house being drunk and disorderly. That could well be it. It could be as simple as that. It could be as simple as that. Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more, Jewish by Jesus. I think you should leave this DM alone. I'm not. If you're still in the chat, if you're still watching the stream, rather than just coming in making an assumption before I've even started the stream, it might be useful that you actually listen to what I've got to say before you make a judgment about me, because I'm here supporting Dylan and telling people to quit with the victim blame, because she is a victim, right? She's been traumatized. She's not a victim in the same way as the murdered are, but she's seen that. She was there. Imagine the survivor guilt that she's got. Imagine the thinking, it could have been me, or it should have been me, because that's what survivor's guilt's all about. Why wasn't it me? Why am I alive when my friends are dead? Right. So I couldn't agree more. People should leave her alone. But I want to discuss this because it's a big topic of conversation. So as someone who has worked as a trauma specialist, I think I've got some credibility to discuss this. If that's okay with you, Jewish by Jesus. I'm sure that is okay by you, if you're still in the chat. Well, we don't know whether she was on drugs. I mean, possibly, but we don't know that, do we? Absolutely, Trixie. We don't victim shame or blame here. There is such a thing as trauma response and survivor guilt. That's exactly what we're going to get into. Exactly. So I'm not going to... I talked about that this morning. I gave kind of my initial thoughts on it this morning based on Dylan's timeline of what she heard when. And bear in mind, we only have kind of sometimes we've got approximately 4 for the DoorDash, and it was a genuine DoorDash because the DoorDash driver came forward and the police have verified that. And then 412, she was on TikTok. Xana was on TikTok. And then 417, there was a noise picked up by a surveillance camera close by, in the apartments close by, and a dog barking and some like the noise of a thud or something like that. So go and watch the video this morning for kind of that timeline. I'm not going to get into a timeline discussion. I personally think that he went to the third floor first, but those details, I think we'll find those out, you know, further down the line. I do think it was his first time because he was so bad. If he'd done a murder before, I think he would have been caught before. He was so bad. Oh, thank you. Thank you. So we're going to be talking about the trauma response today. There was another good comment that I've lost now, completely lost. So it might come up again. Oh, yeah, there it is. Oh, I've missed it. The chat jumped as soon as I said, oh, there it is. The chat jumped. But yeah, something that I am going to talk about is fight or flight. So there's actually more responses than fight or flight. There's actually 4 Fs. Did you know that? There's 4 Fs. Well, there is. There's 4 Fs. So, so we're going to talk about that. Exactly. Do better. Say this every case. I actually say this every case, that we all need to do better. We all do. We all need to do better. Fight, flight, freeze, phone. Thank you. Yes, the 4th one's flop. Yeah. So what happens when we're under trauma? When we're in an acute trauma phase, your autonomic nervous system, so the unconscious system that operates your body, so it like operates your heart rate, your breathing, just everything that we do, everything our body does, all our kind of bodily processes, digestion, all of that stuff is controlled by the autonomic nervous system. So it's automatic. We don't have to think about breathing, do we? We don't have to think about beating our heart or digesting our food. We don't have to think about all of that. It's done unconsciously via a system of the nervous system called the autonomic nervous system. It's autonomic, just means automatic, right? So when we are afraid, when something like shocks us and gives us a trauma reaction, people tend to have a dominant response. And most people actually either freeze or flee. So that the 4 are fight, flight, freeze, or flop. And Dylan in the affidavit actually used the words, and I'll just show it you what she actually said to the police, which has made its way into the affidavit on page 4. So I'll read the whole page in a minute just to refresh everybody's minds. But Dylan stated she opened her door for the 3rd time and she heard crying and saw a figure clad in black clothing and a mask that covered the person's mouth and nose walking towards her. So she made the description, which is consistent with Brian Koberger. She described him as 5'10" or taller, so he's 6 foot. Not very muscular, but athletically built, or we could say that. With bushy eyebrows, he absolutely has got, visible eyebrows. So he walked past her as she stood in a frozen shock phase. So she froze. She just froze. That immediate, oh, what's happening? Oh my word, what's happening? That was freeze in her mind. She probably didn't even think about what's happening. She probably didn't even get there. Because one of the things that happens when our autonomic nervous system has a fright, like a really, goes into the trauma response, we tend to lose the ability to think rationally, to think through what's happening here, right? We lose that ability because the trauma response, the fight, flight, flee, or flop, is a survival mechanism that pretty much all species of animals have. So it's a very ancient mechanism in the brain, right? That, many species freeze, and that is absolutely their dominant response. And some freeze to the point of, the term playing dead. Well, it's well known in some species that they're literally, their heart rate slows to such an extent that they appear to be dead. Some species do that. In humans, freeze is a very, very common response to a trauma. So if you're attacked, and so many victims that I've spoken to personally, or I've had correspondence with via research, in relation to sexual assault. So that's my main area of expertise in trauma research. They say, it's one of the most common things they say. Why didn't I fight back? Why couldn't I fight back? Why did I just freeze? And they use that sometimes for years and years to beat themselves up, to internalize blame. And we know that internalized blame, so it's victim blame, but by yourself, right? It's one of the most destructive, really destructive thought processes that people have after severe trauma, such as sexual assault, or in this case, coming face to face with a quadruple murderer. And it's one of the main reasons why people don't recover and get stuck in a very negative, destructive mindset. So what I'm trying to get across here is that Dylan had, in her own words, a frozen shock. So she just froze, right? Now, if you've been in a situation where you've been attacked, and I'm not going to ask for any personal stories or anything like that, but if you've been in that situation, then and maybe you've been in that situation more than once, you'll probably know what your dominant response is, and you won't be able to change that, because it's an automatic response, right? Fight, flight, flee, or flop. I know what my dominant response is. My dominant response is fight, because I've been attacked, not sexually, but I've been attacked several times, like physically. And I know on every single occasion, I have fought back. I fought 4 people once and stayed on my feet in the street. And they couldn't get a punch in. They did not get a punch in. And it was some lads who just got out of prison, and they were in some kind of halfway house down the road. I mean, I didn't know them, right? I bumped into one of them by accident. And it's many years ago, it's about 20 years ago, maybe even closer to 25 years ago. Oh my word, time flies. And I gave him a look like an F off look, and you know that look that you give. And he headbutted me, and I was on my bike, a bicycle. I was on my bike, and I kind of they were kind of partially in the road, and I went round and accidentally not my bike. I didn't knock him over or anything like that, but my arm just bumped into him, and I saw down and kind of looked at him, looked back, and he headbutted me, and that's the only injury I had, right? So I knew I was going to fall off my bike into the road. So I did a roll, because I'm a martial artist. I was a martial artist at the time. And I rolled over, jumped off the bike, kind of rolling, landed on my feet. And these 4 lads just piled in. And I was just defending, because I couldn't attack. I was just defending using blocks. And then the woman who ran this halfway house just happened to be kind of, I don't know, walking down the street and saw these lads and shouted at them, and they kind of stopped. And anyway, the police got called and blah, blah, blah. And one of the lads the day after saw me, and he came up to me and he said, "I'm really sorry what we did. You know, we just got out of prison. We've been drinking. I'm really sorry. You know, please forgive me." And he was all apologetic and whatever. And he said, "But you are a damn good fighter." He said, "We did not get a punch in. We talked about you later." We did not get a punch in. So I know my dominant response is fight, right? But the vast majority of people's response is either freeze or flee. So I know I would have been killed that night. I know I would. Dylan did absolutely the right thing. Dylan did the right thing. And the internet is blasting her for it. I would have been killed that night because, right, I know what I would have done. I'd have come blasting out of that room and attacked him. Right. But it would have been so quick. It would just have been an instinctive thing, and he'd have just put a knife in me. He'd have put his knife in me, right? Why do you think I have a sword in my bedroom where I can see it, a bokken, a baseball bat? Why do you think I have them there? Not because I'm scared, I'm anything but because it hopefully reminds me that if I hear someone in the night in my house, I don't just go blasting down there, and hopefully I will pick up a weapon before I go blasting down there, because I will go blasting down there. I can promise you I will. That's what I'll do. But I try to curb it. So I've got prompts for myself, right? But anyway, not about me. This is about Dylan. The point I'm making is that she has told us that she has frozen. And that, dear internet, I believe saved her life. Now, we can talk about the practicalities of it. And I know people have been sharing the, the layout of the situation, where Dylan's room was in relation to Xana's, and absolutely the killer, to go out of the back door, would have had to walk past Dylan's room. So I don't have a layout to hand. I probably have one in a file, I just haven't got it on my desktop. But Xana's room's kind of on one side, and then the killer has to walk through the living room and then through the kitchen past the door of Dylan's bedroom to go out of the back door. So that's where the footprint was found, like near Dylan's door. So it's absolutely consistent with what Dylan said, that he went out that way. Now, just to kind of put this in context, because people are saying, well, she came out of her room 3 times and blah, blah, blah. So I'll read this whole page just to kind of put the context in there for those who maybe have not seen it all in its completeness and have, not really dug into it. I know probably most people who are watching this stream have, but I'll just read the whole page anyway. What do you mean? I'll come to the comment. I'll read this page and then I'll come to the comments, because I know there's so many comments and I have been ignoring chat. I've had one eye on it. But I know I've got moderators in there who are doing a sterling job. So, I can just have literally half an eye on the chat over on my other screen. So this is page 4. Dylan stated she originally went to sleep in her bedroom on the southeast side of the 2nd floor. Dylan stated she was awoken at approximately 4 a.m. by what she stated sounded like Kaylee playing with her dog in one of the upstairs bedrooms, which were located on the 3rd floor. A short time later, Dylan said she heard what she thought was Kaylee say something to the effect of, "There's someone here." So in the video this morning, I speculated on, was the killer hiding upstairs at that point? So shortly after 4, did he use the DoorDash as a cover? When the DoorDash came, was that fortunate? I talked about that this morning. Just throwing around ideas, really. Until the whole details come out, that's all we can do. But this timeline's it's horrifying, but it's also intriguing as well. So was there someone upstairs at that point, or was Kaylee merely talking about the DoorDash guy? Heard someone at the door and said there's someone here, and it was the DoorDash guy. So we don't know. So a review of records obtained from the forensic download of Xana's phone showed that this could have been Xana, as her cellular phone indicated that she was likely awake and using the TikTok app at approximately 4:12. So it could have been Xana moving around. It could have been Xana going to the door for the DoorDash and then going, starting to eat her DoorDash and just flicking around on TikTok. There's a shot, you might have seen it. There's a shot that someone took from inside the window, and you can see a bag with Xana written on it. I think it's Chick-fil-A. And that bag has been opened, so it looks like she's taken something out of that bag and then just left the bag. So I don't know. I guess it doesn't matter now, but she was certainly alive and well checking TikTok at 4:12. So Xana downstairs was alive and well. So was the killer already upstairs? Because by 4:17, we have that noise on the surveillance. But this is focusing on Dylan's response here rather than the timeline. So Dylan stated she looked out of her bedroom but did not see anything when she heard the comment of someone being in the house. So she'd have been nervous, wouldn't she? She'd have been, oh, is there someone in the house? And then thought, no, I'm being stupid. Do you know that thing that you do when you think there's someone downstairs? Have you ever done it when you wake up and you hear a noise and you think, is there someone downstairs? Well, I know darn well what I do. I go flying down there. I go flying down there, right? You know, and I can't help it. I can't help myself. I do. I'm instantly wide awake, ready to go. Come on, bring it on. Go ahead, punk. Make my day. You know, that kind of stupid, getting yourself killed reaction that I have. Right. But have you ever been in that situation where you think you've heard something and you're not sure? And then you just go back to bed? You know what I mean? You just think, oh no. And you listen for ages, don't you? You listen for a bit and you think, oh no, you know, it's maybe just like cats outside or something, or cats knocking stuff off the kitchen surfaces, which is usual. That's what usually happens. The cats, like, who are, one of them's nearly 17, one of them's 15, but still, every so often in the middle of the night, they have a little rampage where they run around madly and knock stuff off everywhere. So yeah, it's usually that. Anyway, DM stated that she opened her door a second time when she heard what she thought was crying coming from Xana's room. She then heard a male voice saying something to the effect of, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." So thank you, Debbie, for the $4.99. Sorry, I missed that. It's just on my screen there. Good on the police to say everyone was asleep. Imagine all the ramifications if they let this out. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. They played it really well. They really did. But thanks for the donation. It's very kind. So a lot of people are saying, well, what a friend. What a bad friend she is. She probably feels that now, right? She probably riddled with guilt, thinking, I'm such a bad friend, I didn't go and help. When my friend was dying, I didn't go and help. But once again, that doing nothing saved her life. Because likely, if Dylan had have gone out and gone and seen what the problem was, she'd have been stabbed as well. Most probably. But, you know, maybe she's thankful. Maybe she wakes up some days and she's thankful that it wasn't her. And then the survivor guilt hits her. Have you ever thought of that? That what that must be like? That intense sense of relief for being alive, but that the intense sense of guilt for being alive. So, you know, do better. Do better. Internet, dear internet, do better. So I'm wondering, like some people are saying, was that Ethan finding Xana and saying, it's okay, I'm going to help you? But wouldn't she have recognized Ethan's voice? You would think. Because if she could recognize Kaylee from upstairs, then Dylan is literally feet away from Xana's room. So wouldn't she recognize, if she could hear the words, wouldn't she recognize the voice? So it just leads me to believe that it's the killer saying that rather than Ethan. But I don't know. It could be Ethan. And, you know, I don't know. Sharon, thank you for the $13.99 Canadian dollars. My heart goes out to it. Mine as well. Absolutely. And Run the World. Oh, you go and run the world. You go and run the world. Thanks for the $9.99. Thanks for doing this live. You're very welcome. Thank you for the donations. So, yeah, she probably feels like she was a bad friend. She probably does. But it has saved her life. It has saved her life. But she opened the door for the second time. So she's now in a state of what's going on? Like, probably confused. What's going on here? Is there something wrong or not? And then at 4:17, the security camera next door hears the thud, the dog barking. So So Dylan will have heard that. She'll have definitely heard the thud and the dog, definitely. And we've already established that she heard crying. So thank you, Gelsey or Jelsey. Sorry, I forgot you spell I'm just not good with names. Thank you for the $6.99 Canadian dollars. Thanks for all you do. Oh, thank you. And Latest Grace, thank you for the $5. That's very kind. Thank you so much. Okay, so at that point, she then opens the door for the third time after she heard crying and saw a figure clad in black clothing and a mask that covered the person's mouth and nose walking towards her. So she does the description. The male walked past her as she stood in a frozen shock phase. Walked out the sliding doors. She locked herself in her room after seeing the male. She did not state she recognized him. This leads investigators to believe the murderer left the scene. So people are saying, okay, I understand that she was fearful and she locked herself in a room. But why did she then wait nearly 8 hours? So 7.5 hours to call 911. And that is a very good question. That is a very good question. So here's just my opinion. And before I give you my opinion and talk about a trauma response, like what happens after that initial shock, you know, that initial autonomic nervous system kind of boost of adrenaline and noradrenaline, and you know, your heart's beating like the clappers and you don't know what to think and you're just really confused. Excuse me. Dusty room, still not cleaned it. And you're just frozen in shock. What happens next? So we'll talk about that. Thank you, Down Under with Love, for the $5 Australian. And Run the World has become a member. Welcome to the Secret Agents Club. Thanks for joining. Okay, so I'm going to show you this. Now, I obviously have no knowledge of whether this is true or not, whether this is someone making it up. And we've seen a lot of people making stuff up. We've seen a lot of people making this stuff up. But this was posted in my Facebook group today. And it makes sense. It makes sense. So this is someone who knows Dylan, allegedly. This is all alleged. And this could be someone making it up. It could be. But equally, it could be someone who actually knows Dylan. And listen to this. So I also know that she was very confused about what she had seen and heard. I don't want to give too many personal details, but she suffers from PTSD due to some things that happened to her in her childhood. So she has extreme nightmares and panic attacks often in the night. She told the friend who made the 911 call that she thought she saw someone in a mask in their house, but wasn't 100% sure it wasn't a nightmare. And that's why I feel so awful for her. I'm sure she will beat herself up for the rest of her life, but knowing her situation and also that they'd been drinking that night, I 100% believe that she was in shock and just tried to talk herself out of what she'd seen and heard. So when I read that, that makes complete sense. That makes complete sense. Now, again, this is alleged. This is something that someone posted in a Facebook group that got posted to my Facebook group. It could be someone making it up. But what reason would somebody have for making that up? Why would they make that up? I don't know why they'd make that up. But let's just assume, right? Let's even just take Dylan out of the picture, right? And say, how would someone... So how old is Dylan? 20, 21? So a young adult, right? We'll not call her Dylan. We'll not give her a name. We'll just say a young adult, right, who's got PTSD. Is this scenario making sense? Could this scenario be the explanation as to why she did not call 911 right there and then? Is that possible? Now, there are other possibilities. Daughter of Scotland's comments still on the screen. There might be additional things that we could think about, that maybe her phone wasn't in her room. That's one thing I thought of initially. And she was too scared to go and get it. Maybe she just left it in the living room and she was too scared to go and get it. And it was only in the morning she ventured out. But then what had she been doing all night? You know, after things had gone quiet, how long did she wait before she went to get her phone? So I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about that. I think what we should consider, hypothetically speaking about a hypothetical young adult who'd experienced trauma in their childhood. What reaction would they have when their dominant responses freeze, right? And, you know, it's not fight or flee, you know, run out of the house in a panic, or fight and get yourself stabbed, or flops, the fourth one. Flop is when you become very, very compliant. So it manifests in things like kidnapping situations, where people basically do everything they're told without question. And even if they technically could escape, they still comply. It's called flop, because you've just basically flopped into this very compliant mode of pure survival. But you don't see it in a like you know, a situation where you get completely shocked by a masked intruder in your house. Flop is not going to be a thing that you do, because it's not required of you, right? It's not required of you because that person hasn't confronted you. So that's not required of you. But what we've got evidence of in this situation, in Dylan's own words, is that she froze. So let's assume, not calling her Dylan, let's assume that this is a young adult whose dominant response is freeze and who has had trauma in childhood, right? So we don't know anything about this young adult's experiences in childhood other than she's got PTSD from it. So we've got to assume that the trauma was severe enough to initiate PTSD, a long-term PTSD situation. So PTSD is a manifestation of chronic stress. It's a diagnosable condition, but it's a manifestation of chronic stress based on a specific trigger. Now, that's more likely, PTSD is more likely to be severe if the trauma itself is severe. So let's talk about things like childhood abuse, whether it's physical abuse, sexual abuse, extreme neglect, or whether it's repeated. So repeated trauma, like living, even if the violence is vicarious, so not happening to you, but you're experiencing it. So growing up in a domestic violence household can have the same manifestation of PTSD. Having multiple traumas, multiple victimization early on in life, and extreme trauma early on in life, especially chronic traumas, actually rewires the brain. There's neuropsychological research that has come out in the last few years that children who experience trauma in early childhood, now whether that's through extreme abuse in the home, sexual abuse, or whether it's through war, things like war, disasters, things like that, living in a war zone, living in a disaster zone, it rewires the childhood brain and the manifestation of the adult personality as a result of that. It changes the essence of that person. Not in all ways, but in some key ways. So they're more likely to be anxious quickly. They're more likely to be emotionally deregulated, so have very volatile emotions. They're more likely to be depressed, get depressed, go through bouts of depression. They're more likely to experience dissociative disorders. Almost all people who suffer from what used to be called multiple personality disorders, now called a more appropriate dissociative personality disorder. Identity disorder, sorry. Dissociative identity disorder, not personality disorder. But I'm going to come on to personality disorder. Just a tad, just a minute. Dissociative identity disorder. Have experienced extreme trauma, prolonged extreme trauma, often of sexual or violent nature. Now, I'm not saying that this young adult in our situation is experiencing dissociative identity disorder. I've got no idea. But dissociation happens to all of us, right? Dissociative identity disorder is just an extreme version of what we all do on a daily basis. Personality disorders, whether we're talking about borderline personality disorder, is another disorder that is most likely to frequent an adult who has had trauma in childhood than one that hasn't. Not exclusively by any means. Antisocial personality, almost all personality disorders actually. But we're not going to talk about that. So, but suffice to say that personality disorders are just an extreme manifestation of the personality that you or I have, right? And dissociative identity disorder is just a very extreme form of dissociation. Daydreaming, right? You know, wandering off into a little world of your own when you're bored or just whenever. And we all do it, don't we? On a daily basis. We all daydream. That's dissociation. It's dissociating from the world. But you snap out of it very quickly. Right? You can snap out of it on cue. You know, when you if you're, let's say, for example, you're bored at work, right? And you doze off into a daydream, dreaming about what you're going to do when you win the lottery or this, that, the other. And then your boss comes around the corner, you instantly snap out of it, don't you? Right? But it is a form of dissociation. Everybody's brain is capable of dissociating, right? And I've only mentioned dissociative identity disorder because it's probably the most extreme form of dissociative disorder that people know about. People have probably heard the term multiple personalities. You got multiple personalities or split personalities. But there's other dissociative disorders that are common in people who've experienced trauma in childhood. There's a condition called depersonalization or derealization. And it can be characterized by people going through phases where they feel like they're not in the world. They feel like they're in a dream, even though they know they're awake. Or they feel that things around them aren't real. And I've experienced derealization. I know what it feels like. And it's like you're there and you know you're there, but nothing feels quite right in the world. And for me, when I was experiencing derealization, light would change. So if there was, let's say, if I was at work, and there was artificial lights on, like in a classroom environment or office environment, they change. I can't explain it, but it becomes more blurred. The light's blurred. Now, my vision isn't blurred. It's the lights that are blurred. It's weird. And it's like this really distant feeling. So putting this together with our young adult who's had trauma in childhood, whose dominant response is freeze, and who is confused about what's happening in their house, and then they see a masked man walking by them, right, dressed in black, and you just freeze because that's your dominant response. What happens next? What happens next? Right? Could be the explanation as to why Dylan didn't call 911. ASMR fan, thank you for the $4.99. Sending on behalf of my mommy, who's 90 years young today. Ah, hi from Rain-drenched California, with super sunny skies finally. Oh, I can't say the same here. It's definitely not super sunny. It's not going to be super sunny for at least another 6 months, I don't think. So, what happens next? So, this person is just in a complete state of shock, right? May well have dissociated somewhat. May well have done. Not necessarily, but may well have done. And they try, maybe, if they've had therapy, and we don't know whether this young person's had therapy before, they might have, if they've not had formal therapy, they might have done self-help stuff, you know, like mindfulness or something like that. So this person's recognized that they're maybe going to have a panic attack. You know, they've got so anxious that they're going to have a panic attack, or they've dissociated somewhat, and they recognize that. So they maybe try to calm themselves down by thinking, no, what I've seen isn't real. That can't be real. That can't be real. And bear in mind that this was a Saturday night into Sunday morning. And even though we don't know what our young adult's been doing, we perhaps might speculate that they've been drinking. So there's alcohol involved as well. So we know alcohol can change the way that we think. It can make us more rash. It can, you know, we lose the ability to think logically in many cases. Now, I'm not saying here that alcohol consumption is the main reason. I'm not. But it could be a factor. But I think this person perhaps has tried to rationalize it in their own way and think, no, what I've not seen is real. I'm having a nightmare. You know, this isn't real. I don't know what's going on. I'm confused. So this person will calm themselves down and try to just think, right, okay, what should I do next? And he's still panicking, but he's starting to calm down a bit. What should I do next? So they listen, and there's nothing. Everything's quiet. Dogs stop barking. There's no more thuds. There's no more shouting. So this person then thinks, well, should I go and get my phone? Let's just imagine that the phone's in the other room, or, you know, the phone's on a table in the room and maybe you need to plug it in or whatever. Should I call 911? Well, at this point, an undisclosed period of time might have passed by. We might not even know how much time's passed by. Half an hour might have passed by. An hour might have passed by, while this person might have been practicing some mindfulness or practicing, there's various techniques. I did a counselling course because I'm a psychologist. I'll show you some of my publications. Hold on. I'm not going to actually show you them. I'm just going to. So this is Google Scholar. I just typed in Michelle Law Trauma. And these are some of my publications from the most recent kind of publications. So trauma characteristics and post-traumatic growth. Post-traumatic growth. We did a lot of projects actually with PhD students about post-traumatic growth. So it's what happens after, in the long term after trauma, how people grow through trauma. There's that one. That's a good study if you want to read it. Gender role, male survivors of sexual abuse. PTSD in veterans and civilians. We did a comparison of veterans and civilians who've got PTSD. Partner violence. Actually, no, it's not. It's partner relationships for male survivors. So this is adult survivors of sexual abuse. Yeah, so that's just the first page of Google Scholar. It's just whatever, just to show you that I have actually published in this area. There's some people doubt, but just go and look me up. Go and look me up. My real name is Michelle Lowe. So it's not a secret. Yeah, so yeah, this person might have, I did a counseling course. So I'm a psychologist, but psychology is a very diverse discipline. It's not the same as counseling, but I did a counseling course. I just did my level 2. But what year would it have been? 2013. And our counsellor, tutor, got us doing all sorts of different exercises and progressive muscle relaxation, stuff like that. Taught us loads of techniques they just like to use, basically. And I thought it was great because I was going through, at the time, 2013, I was going through a lot of stress at work. Not the job that I ended with, but my previous job. It was so good. I could never do mindfulness, but progressive muscle relaxation was very good. Very good. So our young adult might have practiced something like that. We don't know. We're only speculating. We don't know. And then they think, well, it's all quiet now. I was overreacting. I was being stupid. I don't know why I was so upset. I don't know what freaked me out. I don't know why I had a panic attack, because there's nothing there. So now everything's quiet. This person thinks they overreacted. So what do? They go to sleep. Right? They go to sleep. And then they wake up, I don't know how many hours later, 4, 5 hours later, and think, what on earth was that last night? Was it a dream? So they call a friend. They might call, I don't know, they might have called Bethany or called some mates, and we know that it was a friend that called 911. So they get a friend to come round. And we don't know exactly where, we know where they were now. So we know Xana was on the floor in her bedroom. We know Ethan was in that room, but we don't know where. We don't know if he was on the floor. We don't know if he was on the bed. Speculation alert, perhaps one or both of them were behind the door. So when they tried to get in, maybe there was some resistance behind the door, and they thought, oh, they've collapsed. And that's why the call came in for an unconscious person, because they couldn't get in the door. That's been my speculation all along, actually. And that could be what it is, because we know Xana was on the floor. So they could have both been on the floor. Right. So I think it's that. I really do think it's that she panicked initially and then had to spend some time calming down and then thought that she was overreacting. I really do think that's what happened. Now, obviously, there's lots more details to come out. We've no idea what the true story is of all of it, but I can bet you any money that the FBI will have interviewed her, probably with specialist officers who are specially trained to get information out of trauma survivors. So if they had any inkling whatsoever that she was faking and that actually she did it or was involved in it or knew who that person was, do you think that specially trained FBI special agents with special training in interviewing trauma survivors wouldn't have sussed that? wouldn't have worked that out. Yes, absolutely, they would have done. They'd have worked that out. They can sniff a mile a mile off, right? In those situations, people can't fake it for that long. And she may well have told them, you know, absolutely guilt-ridden, that I didn't call 911. I didn't call 911 because it went quiet and I just thought I was overreacting. So that's my theory. That's my theory. So what is yours? And I've ignored the chat for how long? A long time, because I've just been chatting. I've just ignored. I've just been talking to myself. So I'm not going to go all the way back up. I'm just going to go a little bit up and then see what some people are saying. I'm going to try and pick out some questions, and then I'm going to go on to familial DNA. We don't know what handedness he was. We don't know that question. Oh, Katie knows. Right-handed. 90% of people are right-handed, so maybe it's more like he was right-handed. Does it matter what handedness he was? ACP says DM and BF had cell phone activity that Ellie used to determine the time of the murders. What does it actually say? What's ACP? That's an acronym I don't know. Let me read exactly what it says. Hold on. Okay, right, I've got it. Share my screen here. Okay. So it says, a combination of Dylan's statements to law enforcement, reviews of forensic downloads of records from Bethany and Dylan's phones, and videos of a suspect video as described below, leads investigators to believe the homicides occurred between 4 a.m. and 4:25 a.m. So obviously we don't know the specific nature of this, what this means, what they've actually got, but it gives them an approximate timeline. Like basically what Dylan, as I talked about in my video this morning, you know, it's added some confusion, because if Xana was alive and well at 4:12, but yet there was something going on upstairs, was that literally Kaylee playing with a dog, or was that something more sinister? And then did the killer come in like shortly after 4:12? Because everything seemed to be fine at 4:12, unless the killer was already upstairs and then came downstairs. So we don't actually know, but that's what it says in the affidavit. I'm just going to flick down looking for questions. No. No, I don't think she was asleep. No. I mean, even if they were just going to sleep, or Maddie was asleep, maybe Maddie was asleep. So the thing about when the coroner said that they were all asleep, that wasn't true. Like, look, law enforcement and their, you know, related agencies are allowed to lie to the public. You know, they told us that the roommates were asleep downstairs. Did they tell us that, or did we just assume it? I can't remember, but they led us believe that the roommates were downstairs asleep. They didn't correct it. They didn't correct us when we said that, or when reporters said that. So there's very good reasons why they didn't quite tell the truth. Very good reasons. No, and I honestly don't think that she's deliberately done anything. I don't think the timeline's even blurred at all. I don't think it's blurred at all. I think once we get to know the truth, because they'll know who was killed first, second, third, fourth, most likely by the transfer of blood, because it was the same weapon. So they'll know, and that will come out. We might have to wait till trial, but it'll come out, and then we'll just be like, oh, that's what it was, and it will make complete sense. So I don't think there's been any blurring of any timeline, honestly. I absolutely do think she's got survivor's remorse, yeah, survivor's guilt. It must be your device, because hold on a minute. Let me look to see if I can super chat myself. Why will it not even let me see the bottom of my screen? This computer's gone nuts. Hold on. Yeah, I can see the super chat button, so it's just your device. Alwyn. Moonbeam Muse, member for 9 months, playing catch up again. All right, you be on the replay crew. That's fine. I don't think I've missed any more members' questions, because members' questions, I can't see them on StreamYard. It doesn't show up. You know, when it says member for 9 months, that little message doesn't show up. Well, I've just explained what I think happened. I know this. I'm going back, like, what time is it now? Like 10. These messages were sent 10 minutes ago, so maybe that is another good point. That is another good point. Maybe she has medication for her nightmares. Yeah. Maybe she takes some kind of sleeping medication or something like that. So she woke up groggy, like she'd taken her medication, gone to sleep, and then woken up groggy. And then if there's any alcohol on board as well, even a small amount, might magnify, depends on the medication. I mean, I'm not a pharmacist, so don't ask me to talk about the chemical interactions between alcohol and certain medications, but there are some. So maybe she woke up and she was really groggy, and she genuinely doesn't know at the time whether it was real or whether she was having a nightmare. And also, we obviously don't know, but she may have had spells of like sleepwalking and things like that. Some people who've got anxiety sleepwalk or have some kind, sleep disorders. So like night terrors and things like that. And then they wake up and they actually believe that they're still in that terror just for a split second. So there's a whole range of psychological phenomenon that could have occurred, and the interactions of those, like she's got PTSD. Part of PTSD is anxiety. That's one of the characteristics of it. So she's anxious. She might have medication to help her with anxiety. She might take that at night. It might make her drowsy. And then if she's woken up in the night when she's under the effect of medication, she's woozy. She doesn't know, it takes her a minute to get things together. So once she's in this state of confusion, and then she's panicked, she's frozen, and she has a panic attack. She goes back in the room and has a panic attack. Well, she doesn't know what's real and what isn't. And then she, as I said, she might try to calm herself down and she goes back to sleep. That's why. Moonbeam Muse, thank you for the £5, my own currency. Was there room on the right or the left? So depends where you're looking. So if you're looking from the back, so the back sliding doors, then Dylan's room will be on the right, and then Xana's room is on the left. but like at the front of the house. If that makes sense. Totally. Totally. Absolutely. Yeah, shell shock, which essentially was PTSD because of the battlefield, yeah, was considered a weakness. I do also have a black belt. Yeah. So not only do I have a sword, it's not just to look pretty. I actually can use it. Not that it takes a lot of skill, honestly. I can do a few fancy moves with it, but not practice for such a long time. I'd just be very slash and go to an offender. Someone comes in my house with a knife, I'll say, well, mine's bigger than yours. Shouldn't joke, but honestly. Happy Tree, thank you for the $5. Thanks for speaking on this. Absolutely. BK's to blame, not anyone else. Totally. Assuming, of course, that he's the guilty party. Innocent till proven guilty in a court of law. Yeah, I mean, I think he's got book smarts, not street smarts. All right, Jean. All right. Right. Whatever. You do you. You do you, but you're wrong. But whatever. You do you. I've got 3 degrees. 3 degrees. Absolutely. Totally. I mean, I imagine that she's going to be in therapy for a long time. I just feel so sorry for her. The proximity of time between the crime was only 2 weeks. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Physical. What do you mean? I don't know what you mean by that either. Well, I go for a walk every day. That's physical. That's oops, chat jumped. I was just going to put Tina's comment on screen saying, oh, there we go. It jumped, but I just managed to click it before the chat jumped. Yeah, she just woken up and then she opens the door. Not sure she's heard, she thinks she's heard Kaylee upstairs, doesn't think anything of it, shuts the door. Then she hears something else and then she opens the door again and there's nothing there and she's confused. And then for a third time, she opens the door and that's when she sees the masked man and she's like, I don't know what's going on, what's real and what isn't. So, yeah, it makes perfect sense from a psychological point of view, understanding trauma response and potentially long-term trauma response, then it makes perfect sense. And if you don't believe it, then you do you. But just don't blame her and name her and shame her all over the internet. Don't do that. Just keep it to yourself. That's all I can say. No, that was a thing that came out ages ago, and some YouTubers promoted it. That there was this comment, and again, there could be some truth in it. But then law enforcement confirmed that it wasn't a housemate that collapsed. What they said it at a press conference. What they said was that the call came in for an unconscious roommate on the second floor. So the call was my friend on the second floor, or my friend's roommate on the second floor of 1122 King Road is unconscious. Please send someone. So that's what the police have told us from their own mouth. So whether Dylan did pass out once she realized what had happened, she could have done. She could have done, in addition to them calling in for an unconscious person. So it could be true that either Dylan or Bethany collapsed when they realised. Could be true. But that wasn't why the call was made. No, I wouldn't have had to lock the doors. No. What I'm saying is, if, let's say, he left, slammed the door, and then either Xana or Ethan collapsed onto the floor. We know Xana was on the floor. That's what we were told in the affidavit. Collapsed onto the floor near the door. Then when they tried to open it from the other side, they couldn't, because there was someone behind the door, and they couldn't open the door enough to be able to see inside. So they just assumed that the person had collapsed, because you wouldn't have thought, you know, the last thing you would have thought was 4 of my housemates have been murdered, like slashed to death. You wouldn't, that's not where your mind would go. But yet it might have been where her mind went when she thought back and thought, oh my word, that masked man that I thought was a nightmare was actually a masked man who was the killer. So well, I don't know whether it's lacking in empathy. It's lacking in common sense and empathy. What do you mean she would have seen blood? We don't know that she would have seen blood. We've seen blood on where? We don't know that. If she couldn't get in the room, or the friends who came round couldn't get in the room, then they wouldn't have seen anything, would they? Please address how or even if the prosecution is going to prep the jury for Dylan's testimony based on known facts. It depends. It depends what narrative they're going to go with. And what narrative they go with depends on the preponderance of the evidence from all the witnesses, not just one. So no idea at this stage. Because we don't know. We don't know what else Dylan has said. We only know a little bit, a little tiny fraction of what Dylan has said. We don't even know whether it's likely Dylan's going to be called as a witness. It's very likely she's going to be called as a witness. But we don't know how many other witnesses there's going to be. So, no idea at this stage. That's true. That's true. She might have sat there trying to calm herself down for an hour, thinking, has he gone, 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 and getting herself more panicked and then trying to calm herself down. No, you wouldn't know if they'd gone. But then, you know, eventually she'd think, well, it's been quiet for ages now. I think I was just overreacting. I'll go to bed now. I honestly think there's a straightforward, logical explanation as to why the 911 call wasn't made until 11:58. And it's just everything about this case is just really sad. And that is another one of the things that's really sad. We don't know where her phone was, no. But absolutely, as I said earlier, she might have left it in another room. You know, she might have left it charging in another room or something. And then too scared to go and get it. We just don't know. Because, you know, we don't know what time the friends were called that came round. Obviously, law enforcement will know. You know, if she called her friends immediately and then not call 911, I'm sure that the cops wouldn't have been happy about that. Like, why call your friend? You know, you had the presence of mind to call your friends, but you didn't even call 911. Why didn't you call 911? I don't know. Or maybe she did ring a friend. We don't know. Maybe she did ring a friend and a friend told her not to be stupid and just go to sleep. How do we know? We don't know. We don't know the story. That's another reason why we shouldn't be victim blaming anybody, because we don't know the story. So let's give her all the encouragement in the world to heal from this as best she can, not slag her off and name her and shame her all over the internet. I've explained what I think happened, and I'll leave it at that. Yeah, maybe she did. And he's a doodle. Doodles jump around. Doodles like to jump around a lot. Yes, it does. And it's a dominant response. So it doesn't mean to say that you'll have that response in every single situation. Because there might be certain situations where if your dominant response is flee, you're not able to. So you'll do something else. Okay, I'm going to just answer maybe a couple more questions on this, and then I'm going to just quickly talk about familial DNA. Were the calls to Jack fit in? I've discussed this so many times. I don't think they do fit in. They don't fit in at all to the murders at all. 100%. They don't fit in. They're simply calls that were made by Maddie and Curley between what was it, 2:26 and 2:52. So Curley wanted to speak to him for whatever reason, was one of those people that if you don't get a response first time, you're going to keep calling. That's my mother. That's exactly what my mother does. Although I have trained her now, after a million years, that if you don't get an answer the first time, I'll call you back. So now she rings twice. So that's fair enough. But in the past, she used to ring about 50 times. Like if she didn't get an answer, she'd keep ringing and keep ringing. So Kaylee might be that kind of person. And then she's obviously thought, well, you know, he's not responding to me. You, Maddie, you ring him. Or I don't know, whatever. And he didn't answer because he was asleep or his phone was off or whatever. And that was that. That was that. There's nothing more to it than that. I don't have any more thoughts than that. That's true. That is true, actually. That is true. Yeah. Yeah. Unless she had a friend over that we've not heard about. But yeah, Bethany was Bethany's room was on the first floor. I don't know why you keep making that comment. I don't know what you mean by it. I don't know what you mean by it, so I can't comment on it. So are we still talking about handedness there? Because I'm right-handed, but I could stab somebody with my left hand without a problem. Not that I've ever done it, but I can use my left hand for a lot of things. So I don't know. Do people say play with the dog as a meme? I don't know. Don't forget the 4 a.m. food delivery. Yeah, I mentioned that earlier, didn't I? I talked about it in my video this morning. When I do a video and a live in the same day, I can never remember when I get like an hour and a half into the live, I can never remember whether I said it earlier on in the live or I said it in the video. So I know I've definitely talked about that at some point today. Don't know what the thump was. Don't know. Intriguing. I don't know. The other girl, do you mean Bethany? She's spoken to the cops. I'm quite sure she's been interviewed many times, again by the FBI. And if there was any hint of either of them lying, I'm pretty sure that they wouldn't have come out and said that they do not believe that they're involved in any way. You don't believe that, Michelle? I don't know what you're referring to, Kayla. Thank you, Moonbeam Muse. Oh, I think I thanked you for yours. I'm so far behind. So far behind. Okay, I'm sorry if I've not got to your comment. I've got that far behind now. There's absolutely no way in the world I'm going to be able to catch up. So I'm sorry if you've made a brilliant point or I've got a brilliant question. I'm so sorry. I've just got chatting and got that far behind the chat. Thank you, Wendy Joe, for the $9.99. I'm in complete shock. Yeah, I think we all were yesterday. I think we all were. Yeah, there was an empty bedroom on the first floor. Yeah, I was like yelling at the screen. I was like, oh my, what is this? What is this? Oh wow. There you go. That's what the mind does. That's a protective mechanism. Time in between is blank. Yeah, it's a protective mechanism. Your brain. That's what dissociation is. It's a protective mechanism, essentially. It's a protective mechanism against boredom. You know, like in a mild way, to stimulate your brain. Like you go off into a daydream. And then in severe cases where you've got trauma, like a child of 5 being kidnapped, which is horrific. I'm so sorry you've gone through that, but it's a perfect example that your brain protects you, and it just goes into like this very primal survival mechanism. And in children especially, that can involve just like completely dissociating, zoning out totally, and then you don't remember anything, which is a good thing. It's a good thing for a child. Confusing, very confusing, but you know, what's the alternative? Deborah, thank you for the $9.99. Oh, thank you. All right, I'm not going to dwell too much on this. I just want to explain this DNA situation. So Well, I'll get the affidavit up again and just read the paragraph that is relevant, because there has been some confusion over this. There really has. I've seen people saying, so what does that mean? Does it mean that his dad did it, or could it be his dad that have done it? And no, it doesn't mean that. So I'm just going to very quickly talk about what familial DNA is and how it works in like a crime setting. Let me just find it. Oh, here we are. It's right at the end. Right at the end. So they'd already got DNA from the killer, from the sheath of the knife that was left at the scene. So they already had the killer's DNA, right? The suspect's DNA. But they couldn't match it to anything because he's not a felon, or, you know, he's never come into contact with the law in any way that would have flagged up. Because when if you've committed a felony, or there's probably other, maybe, I don't know whether in some cases they'll take your DNA if you've, committed a misdemeanor. I know in the UK they take your DNA at every possible chance the police have. They'll take your DNA, and it's a cheek swab. So they have like a big, like, cotton bud, we call them in the UK. I don't know what you call them, and they rub it in your mouth on both sides a little bit and get basically cheek cells come off, and then they put it in a test tube, and then they send it off, and they store your DNA on file. So at the time, like, they'll have his DNA now because they'll have swabbed him. Like, once when he was arrested, you better believe they'll have swabbed him. So they couldn't match it to anything because it wasn't in their police database. So the speculation came out in the media that they'd used genetic genealogy, genetic forensic genealogy. So it's the equivalent of ancestry testing. So if you've sent your DNA off to certain websites, many of them will protect your data, but there's some that actually work with the cops. And if you want to, let's say, for example, 23andMe doesn't work with the cops. 23andMe is very proud that it protects its database. So, they're not gonna add a criminal's DNA or a suspect's DNA to 23andMe, because whatever, they won't comply. But you have the choice, right? So if you submitted your DNA to 23andMe or Ancestry or any of the other sites that don't work with GEDCOM, which is the database from the civilians, you can actually download your own DNA, like all the letters that make up your DNA profile. You can download it from that site and upload it to GEDCOM or GEDmatch. So you can do that. But there are some sites that automatically do that, will work with the cops, and those are the sites that the cops work with. So it was all thinking that this was a match that had come back via genetic genealogy. But no, it's not. Not, at least, not that we know of, right? So opt into GEDmatch. Yeah, GEDmatch is one of those sites. So TV Cat, you're absolutely right. They did not use genealogy, at least in the form of uploading his DNA to a website and then getting a match back from a family member. That's not what happened. At least it's not what we've been told. Now, they might have done that as well, but I'm quite sure if they had, they'd have told us in this affidavit, right? But what they did instead was another form of familial DNA collection, which is essentially genealogy, right? It's just not doing it via a website. It's doing it via the old-fashioned method. And the old-fashioned method is collecting a discarded item from the home of the family of a suspect. And this is exactly what they did. So on December 27th, can you see that? Am I sharing my screen? Yes, I am. So this is on the very last page, page 18. So on December 27th, so 3 days before he was arrested, Pennsylvania agents recovered the trash from the Koberger family residence located in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. That evidence was sent to the Idaho State Lab for testing. And then 1 day later, so they fast-tracked it. Of course they did, right? Because if you submit your own DNA to like 23andMe, it takes them like 4, 5, 6 weeks. But, you know, when the cops do it to a crime lab, they do it like very quickly. So the day after, on December 28th, the Idaho State Lab reported that the DNA profile obtained from the trash and the DNA profile obtained from the sheath identified a male as not being excluded as the biological father of suspect profile. So this is something that's confused people as well. But they say this, right? At least 99.9998% of the male population would be expected to be excluded from the possibility of being the suspect's biological father. Now, if you've ever done a paternity test, you know, like for your own child, you know, to find out if a child is yours, or you've seen one, then you'll know that they never say 100%. Right? I don't know why, they just don't. But what they say is that we can exclude 99.999999% of everybody else in the world. Therefore, if we can't exclude you, that means that you must be as near as damn it, you are the suspect's biological father. Why don't you think, right? You're playing for pride, not a prize. Why don't you think they say 100%? I'll wait. Why don't you think they ever say 100%? I shook my family tree and a bunch of nuts fell out. Thank you, Bug Love. If you didn't see Michelle's video this morning, it's worth a watch. Yeah, the 30-mile journey. 33 miles, yeah. Go and watch it. Do I think that the girls, Xana, Dylan and Kaylee and Maddie, were talking to each other on TikTok about someone here? Don't know. Yeah, we're getting the answers here. So yeah, how do that company know that you don't have an identical twin? You might not even know that you've got an identical twin. You know, there's these rare situations where identical twins are split up at birth. It doesn't happen very often, but it's an adoption situation. They're split up at birth and then they're adopted into different families. And then they're reunited 30 years later and they realize that their whole lives are the same, even though they've grown up and they never even known that they had a twin. So they account for the fact that there could be an identical twin in the mix. And an identical twin would share 99.9999999% of that person's DNA. Because identical twins, yeah, technically they're 100%, but they're always 99.9999999 because of possible mutations that take place in the very early embryonic stage. So that's why there are subtle, very subtle differences in identical twins. There's just minor, tiny, weeny differences. That could be genetic or could be environmental. Like one gets more oxygen or mainly nutrition in the womb. Can you tell I used to teach all this stuff? Can you tell? Anyway, right, so that's why they don't. So unless Brian or Brian's dad has an identical twin who secretly fathered Brian, right, then it is his son. They are related. They are genetically related at the father-son level. Right? So the person who said twins, you are correct. That's why. There might be other reasons as well, but that's the reason. Okay, so who needs a quick rundown of what DNA is? Do we all know what DNA? I mean, you know, we talk about DNA, don't we? We talk about DNA and swabbing for DNA. I think everybody really does know what DNA is, but it's the genetic building blocks. It's right. Shall I do this? Yeah, I'll do this. So how did they know? How did they know that the DNA profile of the killer was a male? And how did they know that the DNA that they got from the trash was his dad? How did they know that? I'm just testing you. How much you actually know. Oh. I don't miss teaching. I don't miss teaching at all, but I just go into it. It's just I did it for that long. I go into it. Yes, it's the Y chromosome. So these are the human chromosomes. So usually we have 23 pairs of chromosomes, right? And on these chromosomes is that the DNA is tightly wound into these chromosomes, right? And the DNA makes up genes, and then the genetic fingerprint, so to speak, codes for proteins that make us, right? That's how it works. Okay, so in males and females, you get one chromosome for each of these 23 pairs. You get one from your mother, one from your father, right? So that means that you are 50% the genetic makeup of your father and 50% the genetic makeup of your mother. We know this, don't we? We know this, don't we? Cecile, the Y chromosome, and Brian had no brothers. Bingo! Thank you, Cecile. Bingo. Thank you for the $4.99. That's absolutely right. So, in a boy, right, the final pair 23, is XY. So you get the X from your mother, and you get the Y from your father. So a girl is going to be XX, right? Because at conception, the mother always gives an X because she's XX. So the mother always gives an X. And then the father can give either an X or a Y. And if he gives his X to the baby, then it's a girl baby. And then if he gives his Y, it's a boy baby. Right? So they can very, very easily tell that the DNA profile that they're looking at is a male, because the first thing they do before they do a full DNA profile is they look for the existence of the Y chromosome. So they know that they are looking for a male suspect because they've got a Y chromosome. So it has to be a male. And then when they took the trash out of the bins at the parents' place, then they knew. I don't know whether they specifically looked for male DNA, because they could have done exactly the same thing with his mother's DNA. But they knew it was his father's DNA because his father had a Y chromosome. Cecile, thank you for the 499. How do they handle XXY people? XXY people are still male because they've got a Y chromosome. So they manifest as a male. Like they look like a male. They are classified as a male because they look like a male. So that's how. Is that Klinefelter syndrome? I can't remember now whether that's Klinefelter's. And then there's some people who are just 1X. So for whatever reason, it goes wrong, and one parent doesn't give their X or their Y, and that person has just got 1X. So they are female, but it's called Turner syndrome. Yeah, trisomy 21 is Down syndrome, yeah. No, Mandy. XXY people are not transgender, no. I mean, they could identify as transgender if they wanted to, but the vast majority of transgender people have no chromosome abnormalities whatsoever. But they would be a male. And then somebody with just 1X who's got Turner syndrome is a female, even though they've only got 1X. Anyway, so they knew that they got Brian's dad, because that person had a Y chromosome. So I'm going to show you this. This is my son's 23andMe. The only reason why I'm showing my son's 23andMe, and I'm sure he won't mind, he's gone out, so, and he's a grown-up, and there's no identifying information at all here. You're not going to be able to identify him from his paternal haplogroup. I can promise you. But the reason why I'm showing you his 23andMe rather than my 23andMe is because I do not have a Y chromosome. Poor Kyle, yeah. He's gone out drinking with his friends. He's been going to the gym all week, and now they're going drinking. So, whatever. All right, so I don't have a paternal haplogroup because I don't have a Y chromosome because I'm female. So I had to use my son's. But the Y chromosome, right? You can if you're a male, right? And my son's haplogroup, so his Y chromosome that he got from his dad, 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 right? Traces back. So this haplogroup here, it's just the family of Y chromosome, is J-L26, traces back to one man, right? One man who lived less than 34,000 years ago. So that's 1,360 generations ago. Isn't that amazing? But it's a common haplogroup in Europe and the Middle East. And one in 130 23andMe customers have the same haplogroup, right? So they will have got the DNA profile of Brian, or the killer, and then they've got the DNA profile of Brian's dad. They're not just going to go, oh, well, they've both got the same Y chromosome. They've got the same haplogroup, which whatever that is, because many, many, many thousands of other people have got the same Y chromosome or the same haplogroup, right? So what they do is they do a full genetic makeup. They don't just rely on, oh, well, that's male and they've got the same, therefore they must be father and son. No. They do a full DNA profile. So in Kyle's situation, hold on, I'll just stop sharing just for a second, just in case when I turn the next page, it's not going to give me any weird. Oh yeah, it gives his address here. Not his actual address, but his email address. I don't want to do that. But I will show you. I'm sure he won't mind. Okay. So how much of each ancestry did you inherit from your parents? So they're able to tell Kyle what ancestry, so what ethnic descent he got from each of us. So they've got my DNA on file because I've done my with the same company. So they're able to track that for Kyle because we've linked our profiles together. And then by process of elimination, if it's not on my DNA, then it's got to be on his dad's DNA, even though his dad never done 23andMe. But they're able to give me 50% of his dad's DNA profile because it's shared in Kyle. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? So they do a full genetic makeup, very similar to this, but they use certain, what's called SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms, and they match them, right? It's dead complicated, but they match them. And they will be able to tell absolutely, unless Brian's dad has an identical twin, they'll be able to tell absolutely without a shadow of a doubt that Brian's dad is Brian's dad is the killer's dad, right? Absolutely, 100%, unless Michael Koberger has an identical twin who happened to be Brian's biological father instead of Michael. And I don't know whether Michael has an identical twin. And, you know, it won't have happened. And they also know that the suspect was male because he's got a Y chromosome, so they know he's male. And they also know that Michael Koberger has no other sons because his other two kids are girls who would be XX, not XY. And they'll know that the DNA profile on the knife is not Michael's because it's only 50% match. Because Brian's got 50% from his mother. So Michael Koberger's DNA profile, complete DNA profile, will be a 50% match for the suspect's DNA on the knife. So it's definitely not Michael's DNA on the knife because that's only a 50% match. But guess whose is 100% match? Because now he's in custody and they've got a DNA swab of him. It will be 100% match for that knife. They've got him. Boom, they've got him. Now, his defense can argue up and down this way and that way about the science of DNA profiling, right? But it's used so often, and as long as, right, as long as there weren't any hiccups in the lab, right, that will make the test, whatever reason, it'll make the test dysfunctional, which I promise you will not have happened. But the defense will try. They'll try every single possible angle. They will. They'll try every single possible angle. But the prosecution will be ready, because I'm quite sure that they've heard all of these arguments before. And even though DNA is very strong evidence, right, it's stronger evidence than eyewitness testimony. Right, we don't know what else they've got. We know we've got him linked to the Elantra. We know that Elantra. I think I might do it tomorrow, video tomorrow. No, actually, I'm busy tomorrow. I need some time to go through the maps. I'm going to go through the whole journey. I'm sure by the time I get a chance to do it, because I think it's probably going to be Sunday before I have a chance to actually sit down and plot it out. I'm going to plot the entire journey on Google Earth and just plot it, because it's fascinating what he did. I'll show you the map just before I sign off. I'm going to sign off in a minute, but just before I sign off, I'm going to just show you what I found in the when I did the one of the little things. And by the time I get around to doing a whole video on it, like a complete video on it, loads of creators will have already done it, but I'm going to do it for my own completeness anyway. Cecile says, thank you, Trixie Star. You're the best. That question has been bugging me. So thanks, Trixie, for answering whatever question have been bugging Cecile. And Cecile, thank you once again for the $4.99. It is a lot of plotting. It is a lot of plotting. I'm going to plot it all. I'm going to try. But what I did this morning in the thing this morning was, so I found Kate's Cup of Joe. It mentions in the affidavit Kate's Cup of Joe, which is a coffee stand. And the coffee stand is in Clarkstown. Okay, so we've got here. This is where Brian went on the 13th of November. So he did this really weird thing. So he went from Pullman, which is here. So I'll do Pullman. All right. Am I sharing? Paranoid that I'm not sharing. Oh, here we go. Right, I did this weird thing. So he went from his home in Pullman and he drove 34 miles to a coffee stand in a town called Clarkston, which is in Washington. So he went through this town. So he definitely took this route. He didn't take this longer route. He took this route. So he went 34 miles to Clarkstown to a coffee stand. Why would you drive 34 miles to a coffee stand? Why would you do that? Why would you drive 34 miles to a coffee stand? It doesn't make sense. Unless he went there for a specific reason. Does he like the coffee there? Do they have the very best coffee ever in the whole world? Or is it because it's really close to the Snake River that he could park really close to the Snake River? And this is just a speculation. Just a speculation, right? That he could have gone and sat by the river to, you know, I don't know, decompress. Could have done. Really loves the coffee, right? And gone and sat by the river. Let's see. Let's put satellite view on. You know, is it really scenic and rural? I don't know. Can't really tell from this. But Clarkstown, it's just a small town. And then the river here, Snake River here. Why is it dark? Why is the Snake River really dark? Not sure I like the river being really dark like that. But anyway, yeah, the Snake River here is the dividing line between Washington and Idaho, because he also went to this town here, to the Albertsons. So he went for a coffee, and then he drove over this bridge into Idaho and then went to Albertsons. All right. So they caught him on camera at Albertsons. Weird. But that's where he went. But yeah, why did he go to this coffee stand? And I speculated this morning that maybe the Snake River is a fast-flowing river. Right? Maybe he knew that and he went and put something in there. The knife or shoes that had blood on them. Totally. I don't know. It's weird why he went there. Weird why he went there. Maybe it's his happy place. Who knows? Maybe, for all we know, they found the weapon and they found his clothes with blood on them in his apartment. Who knows? If he's got any sense about him, though, he would have got rid of that knife and got rid of those clothes very quickly. But yeah, what did he get at Albertsons? I don't know. Plasters, bandages. Who knows? Who knows? I bet the cops know, though. Bet you any money the cops know. They might not. They might not. I don't know. But yeah, I'd like to know as well. So yeah, that's what I did. But I'm going to try and plot the whole thing. Every location that's mentioned, I'm going to try and plot it all. So it will most probably be Sunday, because I'm busy tomorrow. There will be a video tomorrow, but it won't be an in-depth one like that, where I'm gonna have to really plan. You know, it's gonna be really annoying doing all the little pins. Who knows? We don't know. I mean, somebody said that Kaylee used to work at that coffee stand, and I can't find any information that she worked there. GEDmatch is a website. The database is called GEDcom, but GEDmatch is a website. It's a DNA website, so it's like 23andMe, but they agree to share their customers' DNA with law enforcement. GEDmatch. But you can actually add your DNA. If you've done your DNA, I'll show you. This is gedmatch.com. So the database is GEDcom. The website is GEDmatch. The company is GEDmatch. The database itself is GEDcom. So you can download your DNA results from MyHeritage, 23andMe, Ancestry, Living DNA, Tell Me Gen, Family Tree DNA, all those, and you can upload it to GEDmatch, and which then uploads to GEDcom, and then your DNA will be shared with law enforcement if they want to do genetic forensic genealogy. So take a DNA test and download the results as a DNA data file. Upload the DNA data file to GEDmatch for processing, explore matching and comparison reports and other DNA tools. So they give you something for doing it, like they give you the benefit of their tools, like they've got 1.4 members. So it's an ancestry site like any other, but they're one site that shares their data. Barley hops, what are you talking about? Hold on, I've lost it now. I can't find it on this screen. I need to put, oh, there we go. It's not familial DNA for this case. As has been explained again and again. Thanks for the review, though not relevant for this case. Of course it is. Family DNA. Right, they've taken a DNA profile from his dad and from the suspect. So how is it not familial DNA? I don't care what it's called, right? I don't care what it's called, but they have got a match between Michael Koberger's DNA and the suspects. So whatever you want to call it, I don't care. But that's what they've got. What is DNA? The genetic building blocks of life. That's what DNA is. That's what DNA is. Yeah, so there you go. We can speculate. We can speculate. He went there for a reason. He's not just gone there for a cup of coffee. I'm pretty sure. Well, who knows? We might even never know. He might never talk. We might never know. At the moment, only 2 commercial DNA databases can be accessed by law enforcement, GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA, and the privacy policies require users to opt out. Yes, but you can take your DNA test from any site. So you can have your DNA tested by 23andMe, download your data, and then upload it to the database that is accessed and run by GEDcom. So there you go. I'll actually show you because I've done it to my DNA. 23andMe. I'll log in as me. I think I downloaded it from 23andMe. I've done that many of these tests. I've got no idea what I'm doing here. Right, I'm not sharing for the second because it'll show me. Actually, I don't care if you see my email address because it's the same email address as is in my description box. Right, I'm logging into 23andMe as me now, rather than Kyle. So that I can just show you. That it has features that hardly anybody use. So you can browse your raw data. Actually, you might not be able to download it. I'm sure you can. You can browse your raw data, look. You can browse all your genes. You can browse by chromosome, or you can put a specific gene in. You won't believe how many hours I've done analysing my own raw data. But you can. Pretty sure you can. I'm getting too much personal information there. I'm going to get rid of that. Yeah, I've downloaded my DNA anyway. Whether I've done it from 23andMe or I've done it from Ancestry, I'm not sure. But you absolutely can, and then you can upload it to whatever site you want. So I don't even know who Johnny Law is, but I did see pictures of Dylan and people saying that Dylan was on the second floor. And I didn't really know what to make of it. I didn't really make very much of it. I just thought, well, maybe she had stuff in that room. How do we know she was actually sleeping in that room? But obviously she was. So whoever said it was right. Yeah. Yeah, his face is a picture, isn't it? He's pulled over by the cops. His face is a picture. Oh, I don't know the name of it, but I've seen the articles about it. I've seen the articles about it. I don't know the name of it though. Does it cost to get DNA from Jed if you've not have it done elsewhere? Yeah, there'll be a charge. I don't know, honestly, because I've never used GEDmatch. I just know what it is. But if hold on. So I don't think you can have your DNA tested by GEDmatch. I think you have to upload your own DNA file that you've paid to get done by someone else. So it says here, anyone can upload their DNA file. So you'll have to have your DNA file. So wherever you get that done at, that's going to cost you. And you can analyze the results and compare DNA shared by others on GEDmatch. So what makes them unique? It's a free DNA comparison analysis website for people who have tested their autosomal DNA using a direct-to-consumer genetic testing company, such as 23andMe, or have a custom file from other sources. See, I told you 23andMe you can download it from. I'm sure I downloaded mine from 23andMe. I just didn't want to click around in the settings because it was sharing like personal information from me and I was doxing myself. So testers download their DNA data file from the testing company and then upload it to GEDmatch. GEDmatch processes the file, adds it to a genealogical database, and provides applications for matching and further analysis. Because GEDmatch aggregates files from all testing companies, your potential for matches is greater. Curtis Rogers founded GEDmatch in 2010 with his co-founder John Olson and a small group of volunteers. Vergogen published GEDmatch in 2019, continuing the founder's vision for a consumer genealogy site with a commitment to infrastructure, privacy, and security. So that's what it is. So no, you'll have to get your DNA from somewhere else and pay for it. And then you can upload it and then you can use their services. So anyway, guys, I said I wasn't going to stay on long. And every time I say that, I'm on 2 hours. And I've been on here 2 hours and 13 minutes. So there you go. Yeah, it's a database, yeah. So the company, the website's called GEDmatch. And then the database, like all the things that get loaded onto it, is called GEDcom. Yeah, it's free to users, yeah. But you have to already have your DNA downloaded. I've got a data file with all my DNA in it. You like your privacy. Good for you. So do I. But there you go. I like doing these DNA tests. I like comparing the companies to see what differences the companies have. Because I'm so sad. Anyway, I hope you found it useful just to go through that. So kind of some psychology and then a little bit of DNA at the end. But I think, yeah, the defense is going to try and argue something or other. they're going to try and argue something procedural. They're going to argue that this trash that they got, well, they'll argue all sorts. But as long as they've done everything right and they've got, the chain of evidence and everything like that is good, then they've nailed him. Yeah. I didn't do. I did my family tree. Not through DNA, but through looking through records. And yeah, I'm a relative of. I'm a great granddaughter of William the Conqueror via an illegitimate daughter of John of Gaunt, who was Duke of Lancaster in the 1300s. So yeah, I'm a little bit royal, but I did that like by just looking through records. It took me years. But if you have English ancestors, right, it's a ridiculously high chance that you're related to William the Conqueror. So you probably are as well if you've got English ancestors, specifically English, not Welsh or Scottish or Irish, but if you've got English ancestors, and I've got some, then you might well also be related to William the Conqueror, because the nobility were able to stay alive longer in those days because they were properly fed and that, to have more children. So their genes have been passed on disproportionately throughout the population. And also, obviously, there's records for them. So once you find that gateway ancestor that you can just go back and back and back and back, the chances are you're going to hit royalty because the records are there for them. But then all the branches that weren't royalty, the records stop at a certain point. So there you go. But I've gone off on a massive tangent now. So he was quite prolific, yeah. Do you think he'll plead? Do you? Do you know what I thought? I thought he would plead not guilty and take it all the way to trial, and he's never going to tell his story. But I'm not sure now. I think if the evidence is totally against him, I think he might. I'm more, just my gut reaction, I'm more still erring along the he'll plead not guilty. But I'm a little bit more towards guilt, he'll plead out, than I was. Because I was absolutely certain that he wouldn't. And now I'm maybe 70-30. Maybe. I think mainly because I've seen the affidavit and looking at that, it looks bad, doesn't it? It looks bad. But I do think that at some point in the future, he'll start doing interviews. So we'll see. Interview with a killer from prison and stuff like that. That's what I thought, yeah. That he's too arrogant. But I guess it depends whether he wants to take the death penalty off the table. Because that's one of the only things he can plead. Like, he can plead to get the death penalty off the table, or maybe to get the burglary charge off his record. But what's the point when he's got 4 first-degree murder charges? You know, what's the point? Because he's going to get life with no parole, so it doesn't matter about the burglary. So whichever way, if he's found guilty or he pleads out, he's in jail for life. He's in prison for life anyway. I don't know. I'm 70-30. Yeah, exactly. That's just the affidavit. It is. That's just the affidavit. Yeah. So once the prosecution starts sharing more of the information that they've got with the defense, then I don't know where he can go with that. I mean, his defense will try, because Ann Taylor, that defendant, she'll want to make a name for herself. You know, like Jose Baez did with Casey Anthony. I mean, he's almost a household name, isn't he? You know, if you think Casey Anthony, then you automatically think Jose Baez, and he was no one. You know, he was no one knew who he was. So, but the prosecution, you know, they were too confident. They were too confident with Casey, and that's how she won. But they were too confident and not clever enough. So the defense were just better at what they did than the prosecutors. But there's all sorts of stuff still to come out. I mean, there's just so many questions just from the affidavit itself. And then you've got to think that only goes up to the point of his arrest. I mean, look at everything they've done since. You know, they've got evidence from his car, evidence from his apartment. They've raided his office. I'm not sure they've found anything there. His parents' home. Not sure they've found anything there either. But the car and his apartment, we don't know whether they've done any searches. You know, if there's indication that he stopped somewhere during this, I don't know, this roundabout route that he did, they may have done some searches, like on the ground. We don't know. And that's only what we know they've done. There could be a whole range of other things that they've done, a whole range of other evidence that they got from the crime scene, because they're not gonna show their hand till they really have to the defense, and they're certainly not going to put it out in the public domain. So I think it could be overwhelming against him. We'll have to wait and see. Well, we will have to wait and see. But guys, I'm going to go because my back's starting to hurt. This chair is not kind on my back. But yeah, so thank you for keeping me. Can't even speak. Thank you for keeping me company. Please do go and watch the video that I made this morning, because it's about the timeline. So a little discussion around that. And thanks for all the donations. You're very, very generous. Thank you to the moderators, as always. And I'll see you tomorrow in a video. All right, guys. See you soon. Enjoy the rest of your day or evening or whatever. And I'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.